The universe, as humanity understood it, was not chaotic. It was vast. It was complex. It was, at times, deeply hostile. But it was not chaotic. Every phenomenon, from the birth of stars to the collapse of civilizations, followed rules. Laws of physics did not bend. They did not improvise. They did not make exceptions for curiosity or desperation. They simply were. For 3 centuries, the Orion Expansion Authority had built its entire doctrine on that assumption. Every jump corridor mapped. Every gravitational anomaly catalogued. Every known form of faster-than-light travel reduced to equations that could be predicted, replicated, and, most importantly, controlled. Even the unknown had structure. Even the unexplained, given enough time, resolved itself into something measurable. That was the foundation of exploration. That was the foundation of safety. And that was the foundation that began to fracture at 3:17 ship time. The long-range sensor array aboard the exploration vessel IAS Horizon detected the anomaly first. Not because it was particularly large. Not because it emitted unusual energy. But because it violated a rule so fundamental that its absence was immediately alarming. It had no signature. Commander Elias Varen stared at the data feed in silence, not because he did not understand it, but because he understood it too well. "Run it again," he said. Lieutenant Cora adjusted the sensor filters, her movements precise, practiced. The kind of precision that came from years of trusting that the instruments would always, eventually, make sense. "Recalibrating across all bands," she replied. "Gravitational, electromagnetic, subspace, all returning the same result." She hesitated. Or rather, not returning anything. On the main display, space appeared undisturbed. Stars burned where they should. Radiation fields behaved exactly as expected. The distant silhouette of a gas giant rotated with predictable elegance. And at the center of it all, nothing. Not empty space. Not vacuum. Not absence. Something else. A region of existence that refused to be measured. Commander Varen stepped closer to the display, hands clasped behind his back. His posture was calm. Controlled. The posture of a man who had spent his entire career trusting that the universe, no matter how strange, would always remain consistent. "Size?" he asked. "Approximately 2.8 kilometers in diameter," Cora answered. "Stable geometry. No detectable mass. No radiation output. No temporal distortion." She swallowed slightly before continuing. "It's just there." That was wrong. Everything that existed interacted. Even a vacuum interacted. Even darkness had properties that could be quantified. This did not. Could it be a sensor shadow? Another officer suggested. Cora shook her head immediately. "No. We're cross-verifying with 3 independent arrays. Optical confirmation matches instrument data." She tapped the console, bringing up a visual overlay. For a moment, the bridge fell completely silent. Because the anomaly was now visible. Not as something present. But as something that should have been there, and wasn't. A perfectly defined absence. As though a portion of reality had been carefully removed and replaced with something that refused to acknowledge the rest of the universe. Commander Varen exhaled slowly. "In 300 years," he said quietly, "we have catalogued every class of spatial distortion known to modern science." No one responded. There was nothing to add. "Log this," he continued. "Unidentified phenomenon. Classification pending." A pause. Then, more quietly. "And notify Central Command that we may have encountered something outside current models." Lieutenant Cora nodded, though her eyes remained fixed on the display. "Commander." He didn't turn. "Yes." She hesitated, searching for the correct wording. The precise wording. The kind that would not sound like speculation. "I'm detecting a boundary condition forming." That made him look. The anomaly, if it could be called that, had not changed. But something around it had. Space, for the first time since its detection, was beginning to react. Not violently. Not dramatically. But subtly. Like a surface under tension. Commander Varen studied it for several seconds. Then, with the calm certainty of someone recognizing the first crack in something that should not break, he said, "Prepare all recording systems. A beat. Whatever this is." His voice lowered slightly. "It's about to do something." For 11.2 seconds, nothing happened. That, in retrospect, would be noted as the final moment in which the universe still behaved in a way that could be described as familiar. Commander Elias Varen did not move. The bridge remained silent, each officer locked into the same unspoken calculation. Observe first, interpret later. It was standard protocol. It was also, under normal circumstances, sufficient. This was not a normal circumstance. "Boundary integrity is fluctuating," Lieutenant Cora reported, her voice still controlled, but thinner now. "Not in any way I can quantify. It's not expanding, not collapsing, it's..." She stopped. Because the word did not exist. On the display, the edge of the anomaly sharpened. Not visually. Conceptually. It was as if the human brain, given enough exposure, had finally decided how to interpret what it was seeing. The absence was no longer passive. It had become defined. Recording at maximum resolution, Cora added quickly, almost reflexively. "All systems are." The anomaly moved. Not through space. Not across coordinates. It moved in a way that bypassed motion entirely. One moment, it occupied a fixed position relative to the IAS horizon. The next, it didn't. There was no transition. No trajectory. No measurable shift. It was simply, elsewhere. Position change detected. An officer called out, too quickly. "Range now 14 kilometers. No, wait, correction, 3 kilometers. Lock it." Varen snapped. "We can't, sir. It's not following, there's no vector, no velocity." The anomaly flickered again. Closer. Then farther. Then. Still. Exactly 1.2 kilometers off the bow. Dead center. Every system on the ship attempted to resolve it simultaneously. And every system failed in a different way. Gravitational readings spiking. "No, cancel that, they're gone." Subspace field is, "Sir, I don't even have language for this." Optical feed is lagging behind real-time by 0.4 seconds. Time index mismatch across sensor arrays. The bridge dissolved into controlled chaos. Not panic. Not yet. But the precise, escalating breakdown of systems that had never disagreed with each other before. Commander Varen raised a hand. And just like that, the noise stopped. "Report one at a time," he said. The discipline returned instantly. Cora spoke first. "All sensor systems are still active," she said. "But they're no longer observing the same reality." A pause. "I'm receiving contradictory data streams that cannot be reconciled." Varen nodded once. "Explain." Cora inhaled slowly. "The anomaly is being detected in multiple positions simultaneously, depending on which system is observing it." She brought up the overlay. 3 images appeared. In one, the anomaly hovered off the port side. In another, it remained directly ahead. In the third, it was behind them. "Each feed is internally consistent," she continued. "But they cannot all be true." "Which one is correct?" someone asked quietly. Cora didn't answer. Because there was no correct answer. Commander Varen stared at the display for several seconds. Then, calmly, visual confirmation. The main screen shifted to direct optical feed. No overlays. No interpretation. Just raw observation. The anomaly sat directly ahead. Still. Silent. Unchanged. "Then that's our reference," Varen said. "All other systems adjust to visual baseline." "Yes, sir," Cora replied, though her tone carried the faintest trace of doubt. Because visual systems could be fooled. But it was all they had. For 3.6 seconds, the universe stabilized. And then, the anomaly opened. There was no explosion. No burst of light. No dramatic surge of energy. It simply unfolded. like a shape revealing dimensions it had always possessed but had chosen not to display. The edges expanded, not outward, but into visibility. And from within that impossible geometry, something emerged. Contact. Cora said sharply. Objects began to appear. Not travel. Not exit. Appear. One after another, in perfect sequence, as though placed into reality by an unseen hand. Counting. An officer whispered. 1, 3, 7, 12. They came in clusters. Small at first, irregular shapes, tumbling slowly, reflecting starlight in fragmented patterns. Then larger. Much larger. 31 objects detected. No, correction, 46. Multiple hull signatures. Damage across all structures, extensive. Atmospheric venting confirmed on at least 8. The bridge lights dimmed slightly as power rerouted to handle the sudden data load. And still, they kept coming. 58, 61, 63. Then, nothing. The anomaly stopped. As abruptly as it had begun. Total objects deposited. 63. Silence returned to the bridge. Not the calm silence from before. A different kind. Heavier. Because now, there was something to understand. And nothing about it made sense. Largest object? Varen asked. Cora's hands moved across the console, pulling up the data. Measuring approximately 1,740 meters in length, she said. Mass readings inconsistent, but within range of a capital-class vessel. The image resolved. And for the first time, the crew saw it clearly. It was not elegant. Not symmetrical. Not designed with the clean, efficient lines of modern engineering. It looked used. Scarred metal plating stretched across its surface, sections visibly torn open as if by sustained weapons fire. Entire portions of its outer hull appeared hastily reinforced, mismatched materials fused together with functional urgency rather than aesthetic intent. It was not a ship built for exploration. It was a ship that had survived something. Barely. Multiple smaller craft surrounding it, Cora added. Fighter class, transport vessels, civilian configurations. Her voice slowed. Some of them are barely holding together. A faint transmission flickered across the comm panel. Weak. Fragmented. Unstable. Signal detected. Communications reported. Unknown frequency, attempting translation. Varen didn't look away from the screen. Can we understand it? Not yet, sir. Language structure is. The signal surged. Then broke. Then reformed. Incomplete, requesting, status. Static swallowed the rest. Translator is adapting, Cora said. But this isn't any known linguistic family. Another burst. Clearer this time. Survivors. That word cut through everything. Not because of its clarity, but because of its implication. Commander Varen felt something shift, not in the room, but in the situation itself. This was no longer an anomaly. This was contact. And whatever had come through that impossible rupture in space had not come willingly. Maintain position, he said quietly. No one questioned it. All eyes remained fixed on the damaged fleet drifting in front of them. 63 vessels. Broken. Burning. Alive. Behind them. The anomaly began to close. Not slowly. Not dramatically. Just, gone. As if it had never been there. No residual energy. No spatial distortion. No trace. Only the ships it had left behind. And the silence that followed. Commander Varen spoke into the quiet. Log update. A pause. Whatever we just witnessed. His eyes remained on the largest vessel, its scarred hull catching the distant light of a dying star. Was not an accident. For the first time since the anomaly had appeared, the situation stabilized. Not resolved. Not understood. But stabilized enough for analysis to begin. Commander Elias Varen did not issue immediate orders. He didn't need to. The bridge crew of the IAS Horizon had already shifted seamlessly from observation to investigation, each station operating at peak efficiency, each officer narrowing their focus to a single, critical task. This was what they were trained for. Unknowns could be managed. Unknowns could be reduced. Unknowns could, eventually, be understood. Full-spectrum passive scan, Varen said. No active probes. No energy emissions. Not yet. If the fleet in front of them had just survived whatever had forced it through that rift, the last thing he intended to do was appear aggressive. Scanning, Cora confirmed. The data began to assemble. Slowly at first. Then faster. Then all at once. And what it revealed did not simplify the situation. It complicated it. Structural analysis complete on primary vessel, Cora reported. Hull composition is inconsistent. Inconsistent how? She brought the data onto the main display. Multiple alloy types, she explained. Not layered, patched. Sections of the hull appear to have been replaced or reinforced over time using different materials, different fabrication techniques. She zoomed in. Some of these repairs are crude. Functional, but not standardized. Varen studied it. This ship wasn't built this way, he said. No, sir. It was kept alive this way. Cora nodded once. Yes. A ship that had been repaired, again and again, with whatever resources were available. Not upgraded. Not improved. Maintained. That distinction mattered. Weapon signatures. Varen asked. Mixed, another officer replied. Primary systems appear to be kinetic-based, projectile weapons, high velocity. Secondary systems include nuclear payload configurations. A pause. And something else. Define something else. We're detecting an energy pattern consistent with faster-than-light capability, but it doesn't match any known drive system. Cora turned slightly. It's not warp. Not slipstream. Not jump gates. It's different. Can you model it? No, she said immediately. Not yet. That was becoming a pattern. Varen accepted it without comment. Smaller vessels. 62 confirmed, Cora said. Classification breakdown in progress. The display shifted. Dozens of ships appeared in layered formation around the central vessel. Not organized. Not defensive. Just clustered. 17 of them are fighter class, she continued. Single or dual occupant configurations. Heavily damaged. Civilian vessels. 41. That number lingered. Status. Cora hesitated. Then answered. Overcapacity. She expanded the data. Life sign density exceeds safe operational thresholds on at least 15 ships. Cargo bays repurposed for habitation. Environmental systems are under extreme strain. Another pause. Several vessels are venting atmosphere intermittently. Emergency seals are holding, for now. The room absorbed that. Not as shock, but as information. Because this wasn't just a fleet. It was a population. Total life signs. Varen asked. Cora's fingers hovered for a fraction of a second before confirming the count. Approximately 58,000, she said. Silence followed. Not because of the number, but because of what it represented. A fleet that size was not an exploration group. Not a military formation. Not a trade convoy. It was something else. Commander. One of the officers said quietly. Yes. They're not in formation. Varen looked. The ships weren't positioned for combat. Not for travel. Not for anything that resembled strategy. They were staying close. Instinctively. Like fragments of something that had broken apart and were now drifting together because separation was worse. Signal update. Communications reported. Proceed. The transmission is stabilizing. Translator is adapting to linguistic patterns. A burst of audio filled the bridge. Still distorted. Still incomplete. But clearer. Repeat, requesting identification. We are in need of. Static cut it again. Then. Assistance. That word landed differently than survivors. It carried intent, dependency, need. Commander Varen didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned slightly. Life sign distribution, he said. Cora brought it up. Clusters. Dense clusters. Irregular. Unbalanced. Show me the largest concentration. The display highlighted one of the civilian vessels. Estimated population. 9,200, Cora said. Varen frowned slightly. That ship isn't built for that capacity. No, sir. How long can it sustain that load? Cora ran the calculation. Then stopped halfway through. Commander. What? It shouldn't be sustaining it at all. That was worse. Because it meant they were already beyond failure limits. Running on borrowed time. Medical analysis. Varen asked. Preliminary only, Cora said. But we're detecting elevated stress indicators across the entire population. Define. Malnutrition in approximately 37% of life signs. Dehydration markers in 22%. Elevated cortisol levels across. She stopped. Almost all of them. Varen didn't need further explanation. That wasn't just stress. That was sustained trauma. At scale. Commander. Communications said again. Incoming signal, stronger this time. The audio resolved further. Still rough. Still imperfect. But now. Understandable. This is. The voice was human. Or close enough that the difference didn't matter. This is Command Vessel Aegis. A pause. We are survivors. The word returned. Clearer now. Heavier. We are not hostile. Another break in the signal. Unless engaged. Varen's eyes narrowed slightly. Not at the words. At the tone. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even defensive. It was procedural. Like a statement repeated too many times to too many unknown contacts. Requesting identification. The transmission weakened again. We require assistance. Silence. The bridge remained still. Every officer understood the moment. This was the threshold. Observation was over. Now. It became a choice. Commander Varen stepped forward. Not quickly. Not dramatically. Just enough to place himself at the center of the decision. He looked at the fleet again. At the damaged hulls. At the overcrowded ships. At the quiet, drifting formation of something that had clearly been through more than a single engagement. Then he spoke. Open a channel. No hesitation. Yes, sir. A brief pause. Channel open. Varen stood straight. Composed. Measured. This is Commander Elias Varen of the Orion Expansion Authority Vessel Horizon, he said. His voice carried clearly across the void. You are within mapped exploration space. A beat. We are assessing your situation. He allowed that to settle. Then, carefully, you stated you are survivors. A pause. Of what? The response did not come immediately. And in that silence, something shifted. Not in the data. Not in the sensors. But in the understanding of everyone on the bridge. Because whatever answer came next was going to redefine the situation entirely. Long enough for every person on the bridge to notice. Long enough to understand that whatever decision was being made on the other side of that transmission was not simple. When the signal returned, it was clearer. Not perfect, but stable. This is Commander Rhea Solon, the voice said. It was steady. Flat. Not emotionless, but controlled in the specific way of someone who had learned that emotion, at the wrong moment, could be expensive. I command what remains of the Aegis fleet. A pause. Subtle. Measured. As for your question. Another pause. We are survivors of extinction. No one on the horizon spoke. Not because they didn't understand the words. But because they did. Commander Varen's expression did not change. But something in the room shifted. Not tension. Wait. Clarify, he said. No accusation. No disbelief. Just a request for precision. The response came immediately this time. Our civilization was attacked 43 hours ago, Solon said. Coordinated strikes across all major population centers. Orbital defenses neutralized in under 8 minutes. A faint distortion passed through the signal. Not static. Something else. As of our last confirmed data, she continued, there are no surviving planetary infrastructures. A beat. No remaining colonies. Another. No homeworld. Silence followed. On both sides. Lieutenant Cora didn't look at Varen. But her hands had stopped moving. Because there was nothing to process. Not yet. Commander Varen absorbed the information the way he had been trained to. Not emotionally. Not immediately. But completely. Casualty estimate? He asked. There was a delay. Not because the answer was unknown. But because saying it mattered. 32 billion, Solon said. The number did not echo. It didn't need to. It settled into the space like something physical. Heavy. Permanent. Commander Varen didn't react. Not outwardly. Cause of attack. Another pause. Shorter this time. We don't know, Solon said. That was the first crack. Not in her composure. In the situation. You don't know, Varen repeated. No. A beat. We know how it was done. That mattered more. Explain. Our enemy does not operate within a centralized command structure, Solon said. They do not deploy fleets in conventional formations. They do not announce presence or intent. Her voice remained level. But something underneath it had changed. Not fear. Recognition. They appear, she said. The word hung there. Simple. Wrong. They adapt, she continued. They learn. They replicate engagement strategies in real time. Another pause. And they do not stop. Varen glanced briefly at Cora. Not for confirmation. For context. She gave a slight shake of her head. No known matches. No database alignment. Nothing. Current status of your fleet? Varen asked. Solon didn't answer immediately. Instead, the transmission shifted. Not visually. Structurally. As if she had stepped slightly closer to the comm interface. We are sustaining, she said. That word was chosen carefully. Not surviving. Not stabilizing. Sustaining. Fuel reserves are at 19% across the fleet, she continued. Medical capacity exceeded. Structural integrity compromised on 11 vessels. A faint noise in the background, voices, movement, something metallic. Life support systems are holding, she added. For now. Another pause. Then, quieter. We have 58,214 civilians under our protection. Varen didn't respond right away. He let the number settle. Not because he needed time. But because she did. You stated you are not hostile unless engaged, he said. Yes. Clarify your rules of engagement. A beat. If fired upon, we will respond with full force, Solon said. If approached aggressively, we will assume hostile intent. Her tone didn't change. But the meaning did. We cannot afford misinterpretation. That was honest. And dangerous. Varen nodded slightly. Even though she couldn't see it. Understood. He stepped closer to the console. Be advised, he continued. We have not raised weapons or shields. A pause. We have no hostile intent. Silence. Then. We are aware, Solon said. That was new. You've been tracking our systems, Varen said. Yes. Since when? Since the moment we arrived. Another pause. You're not hiding anything. That wasn't an accusation. It was an assessment. And you haven't engaged, she added. A beat. That matters. Varen accepted that. Your fleet is heavily damaged, he said. Several of your vessels are operating beyond safe capacity thresholds. No response. Because that wasn't new information. It is our assessment, he continued. That without external support, your current survival window is limited. Now, a reaction. Not in her voice. In the silence that followed. It stretched. Longer than any before it. Because this was the moment. The pivot point. The line between independence and needing help. When Solon spoke again, her voice was unchanged. But something in it had shifted. Not weaker. Just heavier. Your assessment is accurate, she said. No resistance. No denial. Just truth. Commander Varen didn't hesitate. We can provide assistance, he said. The words were simple. Direct. No condition attached. And that was what changed everything. Because on the other end of that transmission, Commander Rear Solon did not respond. Not immediately. Not even after a few seconds. Because this was not part of any protocol she had left. Assistance came with cost. With expectation. With leverage. Always. Define assistance, she said finally. Carefully. Precisely. Commander Varen didn't look away from the display. Medical support, he said. Supply transfer. Structural stabilization. Fuel resourcing. A pause. We have the capacity to sustain your fleet. Silence. Then. For how long? Solon asked. As long as necessary. That was the moment. Not when he offered help, but when he defined it. Unconditionally. And on the bridge of the Aegis. Commander Rear Solon stood very still. Around her, officers moved with quiet urgency. Damage reports. Life support warnings. Status updates that had stopped surprising anyone hours ago. But none of that reached her. Because she was focused on one thing. The voice on the other end of the transmission. You don't know what you're offering, she said. Not as a warning. As a fact. Correct, Varen replied. No hesitation. But we intend to find out. That answer landed. Not because it was reassuring. But because it was honest. Another pause. Longer. Deeper. Then. Commander Varen, Solon said. Her voice had changed. Slightly. Not softer. But less rigid. We have been running for 43 hours. A beat. We have not stopped. Another. We have not been given a reason to. That was the closest thing to emotion she had allowed through. And it was enough. Varen didn't interrupt. Didn't fill the silence. He let it stand. Because some things didn't need response. They needed acknowledgement. Understood, he said quietly. A final pause. Then. Transmit your approach protocols, Solon said. The decision had been made. Carefully. Reluctantly. But decisively. We will not engage your vessels, she added. But we will not lower defensive readiness. That is acceptable, Varen replied. A beat. Prepare your fleet, he continued. We are deploying support craft immediately. Silence. Then. Copy that. The channel remained open for a moment longer. Neither side speaking. Neither side disconnecting. Two forces. Unknown to each other. Different in origin. Different in history. Bound, suddenly, by circumstance. And something else. Not trust. Not yet. But the possibility of it. The channel closed. Commander Varen exhaled slowly. Status, he said. The bridge came alive again. Orders. Data. Movement. But beneath it all. A shift. Because the situation had changed. This was no longer an anomaly. No longer an investigation. It was something else now. Something larger. And far more dangerous. Because somewhere out there, something had destroyed a civilization in under an hour. And whatever it was, hadn't finished. The first transport shuttle crossed the distance between the horizon and the Aegis fleet in 2 minutes, 11 seconds. No one spoke during the transit. Not on the shuttle. Not on the bridge. Not because there was nothing to say. But because everyone understood, instinctively, that what they were about to see would not be contained by language. Commander Elias Varen stood at the forward observation window as the shuttle approached the nearest civilian vessel. Up close, the damage was worse. What had appeared, at distance, as structural degradation now resolved into something far more deliberate. Sections of hull had not simply failed. They had been torn open. Not by explosive force. Not by impact. But by something that had cut through layered alloy as if the material itself had ceased to matter. Edges were smooth in places. Jagged in others. As if the destruction had adapted mid-process. Docking approach confirmed, the pilot reported quietly. No response. No acknowledgement. Because all attention was fixed on the ship ahead. It was never designed to carry this many people. That much was immediately obvious. External access ports had been forced open, reinforced with improvised sealing plates. Thermal signatures bled unevenly across its surface, evidence of internal systems pushed far beyond operational limits. And the lights. Some flickered. Some were completely dark. Some burned too bright. Like a system that had forgotten how to regulate itself. Pressure equalization in progress, the pilot added. The docking clamps engaged with a dull, heavy sound. Then, silence. For 1.3 seconds. Before the inner hatch opened. The first thing that hit them was the air. Not the smell. The weight of it. Thick. Stale. Overused. Every breath carried the unmistakable density of a system operating far beyond capacity. Medical Officer Tarin stepped forward first. Then stopped. Not because of danger. Because of what was in front of him. People. Everywhere. Not moving. Not rushing. Not panicking. Just. Standing. Sitting. Leaning against walls that were never meant to hold them. Eyes turned toward the opening hatch. Not hopeful. Not afraid. Just. Watching. There were too many of them. That was the first real thought. Too many bodies in a space that could not contain them. Too many lives compressed into something temporary that had lasted too long. A child sat near the bulkhead, knees pulled to chest, staring without focus at nothing in particular. An older man held a makeshift bandage against his side, the fabric already darkened beyond usefulness. Two people shared a single water container, passing it between them with careful, measured movements. No one spoke. No one approached. Because they didn't know what this was yet. Rescue. Or something else. Commander Varen stepped through the hatch. Slowly. Deliberately. Not as an authority. Not as a commander. Just. Present. I'm Commander Varen, he said. His voice carried. Clear. Calm. It didn't echo. There were too many people for that. We're here to help. The words felt insufficient the moment they left his mouth. Because help implied something manageable. This was not manageable. A woman stepped forward. Not quickly. Not urgently. Just enough to stand where she could be seen clearly. She wore the uniform of the Aegis fleet. Or what remained of it. We've been expecting you, she said. Her voice was steady. But tired in a way that went beyond exhaustion. Varen nodded once. Commander Solon. Yes. Up close, she looked older than her voice had suggested. Not in years. In experience. The kind that compressed time into something heavier. We'll begin medical triage immediately, Varen said. Supply transfers are en route. Solon didn't respond right away. Instead, she glanced, briefly, at the people behind him. At the medics already stepping forward. At the equipment being carried through the hatch. Then back at him. You should see the rest, she said. It wasn't a suggestion. Varen understood. Lead the way. They moved through the ship together. Not quickly. There wasn't space for that. Corridors were filled. Not blocked. Occupied. People shifted just enough to let them pass. No one complained. No one resisted. Because movement itself required energy most of them didn't have. This vessel was rated for 2,000, Solon said as they walked. Current population. 9,184. She didn't look at him when she said it. Didn't need to. We lost 2 ships during transit, she continued. We redistributed survivors. Redistributed, Varen repeated. Yes. A pause. There wasn't another option. They turned into a larger compartment. If it could still be called that. It had once been a cargo bay. Now, it was something else. Rows of people. Lying. Sitting. Waiting. Medical stations, improvised, overstretched, operated in the corners. Not enough personnel. Not enough supplies. Not enough time. A medic knelt beside a patient, hands steady despite the lack of proper tools. Across the room, a group of children sat together, quiet in a way children were not meant to be. Not playing. Not crying. Just, still. Varen stopped. Not because he chose to. Because something in him did. How long have they been like this? He asked. Solon followed his gaze. Since the attack. A beat. They adapt. That word again. Varen didn't respond. He didn't trust himself to. They continued. Another corridor. Another section. More people. Different injuries. Same silence. Eventually, they reached a reinforced hatch. Solon paused. Then looked at him. This section is sealed. Why? A brief hesitation. Then. Because we don't have the resources to treat everyone at once. The words were precise. Carefully constructed. But the meaning underneath them wasn't. Varen understood immediately. You prioritized. Yes. Another pause. We had to. He didn't question it. Didn't challenge it. Because there was nothing to challenge. Only reality. Open it, he said. Solon studied him for a moment. Then keyed the access panel. The hatch slid open. And for the first time, Commander Elias Varen didn't have a framework for what he was seeing. Not because it was unfamiliar. But because of the scale. Rows. Too many rows. Of people who were no longer moving. Not arranged. Not processed. Just placed. Carefully. Respectfully. But without ceremony. Because there hadn't been time. There were more, Solon said quietly. Varen didn't ask how many. He didn't need the number. It wouldn't change anything. They didn't survive the jump, she added. The word lingered. Jump. Not warp. Not transit. Something else. They were alive when we left orbit, she continued. Some of them. A pause. Not when we arrived. Silence. The kind that pressed against the air. Varen stepped forward. Slowly. Not out of duty. Not out of protocol. But because standing still felt wrong. He stopped near the first row. Looked down. And for a brief moment. The controlled, structured understanding he had built over years of command. Didn't help. Because this wasn't data. It wasn't a report. It wasn't a situation to analyze. It was the result. Of something that had happened too fast. And to too many. Behind him, Solon spoke again. There were 12 colonies, she said. Her voice was steady. But quieter now. We had time to send warnings to 3 of them. A pause. 2 confirmed evacuation attempts. Another. No confirmed survivors. Varen closed his eyes. Just for a second. Not to process. To hold it. Because letting it pass too quickly would have been worse. Total population, he asked. Solon didn't answer immediately. Because this was the number that mattered. 32 billion, she said. The same number. But here. It meant something different. It wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't distant. It was. This. Everything around them. Everything that wasn't here. Commander Varen exhaled slowly. Then turned. Back toward the corridor. Back toward the people still alive. We're going to stabilize this ship, he said. Not loudly. Not forcefully. Just clearly. Solon watched him. We'll get your wounded treated, he continued. We'll redistribute resources. We'll make this sustainable. A pause. Then. We're not leaving you like this. The words hung there. Not as reassurance. As a decision. Solon studied him for a long moment. Not evaluating. Not questioning. Just observing. Then, finally, she nodded. Once. Small. Almost imperceptible. But it was enough. Because for the first time since the attack, she didn't argue. On the bridge of the horizon, Lieutenant Cora watched the incoming medical data stream with growing intensity. Numbers. Charts. Diagnostics. All of it compiling into something that was becoming harder to ignore. "Commander," she said quietly. Varen's voice came through the comm. "Yes." She hesitated. Not because she didn't know what to say. Because of how it would sound. "This wasn't a battle," she said. A pause. "What do you mean?" Cora looked at the data again. At the patterns. At what was missing. "There are no consistent weapon signatures," she said. "No uniform damage patterns. No centralized attack vector." She swallowed. This wasn't a fleet engagement. Silence. Then, what was it? Varen asked. Cora didn't answer right away. Because the conclusion didn't fit anything they knew. "It looks like." She stopped. Rechecked. Confirmed. Then said it anyway. They were hunted. The first change was not visible. It did not appear on sensors. It did not register as a spike in energy or a shift in formation. It was quieter than that. It began with a decision. On the bridge of the IAS horizon, Commander Elias Varen stood at the center of a situation that no protocol had ever fully prepared him for. Unknown species. Unknown enemy. Unknown consequences. And 58,000 lives that would not survive without immediate intervention. "Status," he said. Lieutenant Cora responded instantly. "Medical teams have deployed to 9 vessels. Additional units are standing by. We're prioritizing critical cases and life support failures." Engineering. Initial structural stabilization underway. We've begun reinforcing hull breaches using adaptive plating. It's holding. A pause. Barely. Varen nodded once. That was enough. Fuel. Not compatible, Cora said. Their propulsion system operates on a completely different energy conversion model. We can't directly transfer. Workaround. Another officer spoke. Lieutenant Ares is developing a conversion interface. Estimated completion, 14 hours. Varen didn't react. Too long. A brief silence. Then, "I can push it to 8, Cora said. "Do it." No hesitation. No debate. Orders were becoming simpler. Because complexity cost time. And time was the one thing they didn't have. On the Aegis vessel, the difference was immediate. Not dramatic. Not overwhelming. But undeniable. The air shifted first. Not in composition. In weight. Fresh filtration units, carried in by Horizon engineers, began cycling through overloaded environmental systems. The thick, stagnant atmosphere that had pressed against every breath started to thin. People noticed. Not all at once. But gradually. A deeper inhale. A longer exhale. The absence of pressure they hadn't realized they'd been fighting. Then, the lights stabilized. Flickering systems replaced with temporary power grids. Emergency panels reconnected, rerouted, reinforced with external support. The ship didn't feel repaired. But it no longer felt like it was failing. And that was enough to change something. Commander Rear Solon stood in the central corridor, watching it happen. Not interfering. Not directing. Just observing. Her crew moved alongside the Horizon personnel now. Not as separate units. But as something beginning to align. Instructions were shorter. Communication clearer. There was no time for formality. Only function. A Horizon medic passed her, carrying equipment that Solon did not recognize. "Section 3 stabilized," he said without stopping. She nodded automatically. Then paused. Because no one had reported to her like that in hours. Not since. She pushed the thought aside. There was no time for that. In the cargo bay, now functioning as a primary medical zone, The shift was even more pronounced. Commander Varen stepped inside just as the first full treatment cycle completed. A patient, severe internal trauma, untreated for over 12 hours, was lowered from a Horizon medical platform. Stable. Not healed. But no longer dying. The attending medic turned to Varen. "We can treat this," she said. Not proudly. Not emotionally. Just, stating fact. Varen nodded. Throughput. 70 critical cases per hour, once we scale fully. That number mattered. Because it meant something measurable. Something that could be expanded. "Do it," he said. The medic didn't respond. She was already moving. Across the fleet, similar changes began to cascade. Water distribution stabilized. Food supplies, compact, efficient, unfamiliar, were introduced. Not enough to restore, but enough to sustain. And for the first time since the attack, the Aegis fleet was no longer running out. On the bridge of the Horizon, Lieutenant Cora monitored the data streams as they shifted. Life signs. Stabilizing. Environmental systems. Recovering. Structural integrity. Holding. It wasn't a reversal. Not yet. But it was. Momentum. "Commander," she said. Varen's voice came through. "Yes. We've crossed the threshold." A pause. "Define." Cora glanced at the data again. Then said it simply. "They're no longer collapsing." Silence. Then. "Good," Varen replied. Just that. No celebration. No relief. Because they both understood. This was only the beginning. Back on the Aegis vessel, Solon walked through the same corridors she had passed through hours earlier. But they were different now. Not because the damage was gone. It wasn't. Not because the crowding had eased. It hadn't. But because the people had changed. A man who had been slumped against the wall earlier was now sitting upright, speaking quietly with a medic. The child near the bulkhead had moved, now holding a small ration pack, eating slowly. Two crew members worked together to secure a reinforced support beam, movement steady, coordinated. No one smiled. But they moved. And movement was life. Solon stopped. Watching it. Not with disbelief. Not with hope. But with something unfamiliar. Something she hadn't allowed herself to feel since the attack. Possibility. Commander Varen joined her a moment later. Neither spoke immediately. They didn't need to. The change was visible. "This is temporary," Solon said finally. Not dismissive. Just factual. Varen nodded. "Everything is." A pause. "But temporary can be enough." She looked at him. Studied him. "You don't know what's coming," she said. "No," he agreed. "Then why commit resources like this?" A fair question. A necessary one. Varen considered it for a moment. Not because he didn't have an answer. Because he wanted the right one. "Because you're here," he said. She frowned slightly. "That's not a strategic justification." "No," he said. "It's not." A beat. "But it's sufficient." Solon held his gaze. Searching for something. Hesitation. Doubt. Calculation. She found none. "You're risking your ship," she said. "Yes." "Your crew." "Yes." "For people you've known for less than an hour." Another pause. "Yes." The simplicity of it was the point. There was no deeper explanation. No hidden logic. Just choice. Solon looked away. Back at the corridor. At the people moving through it. Alive. Still. "We had allies," she said quietly. The words came without warning. Not directed at him. Not entirely. "They calculated," she continued. "They assessed. They weighed outcomes." A pause. "They didn't act." Varen didn't interrupt. Didn't offer anything. Because this wasn't something to fix. It was something to hear. "And you," she said, almost to herself. Another pause. "You didn't calculate." Varen exhaled slowly. "We did," he said. That made her look at him again. "And We decided it didn't matter. Silence. Longer this time. He let it sit. Because that was the difference. Not intelligence. Not capability. Decision. On the bridge of the horizon, the sensor array picked up something new. Subtle. Faint. But there. Commander, Cora said, her voice tightening slightly. Yes. We're detecting residual energy patterns at the edge of the sector. Varen's tone shifted immediately. Type. Unknown. A pause. Consistent with the anomaly that brought them here. That was enough. Distance. Approximately 3.7 light minutes. Not immediate. But not far. Varen turned. Eyes narrowing slightly. Is it active? Cora hesitated. Then. I don't know. That was worse. Because unknowns that repeated weren't accidents. Back in the corridor, Solon saw the change in Varen before he spoke. What is it? She asked. Something we need to look at, he said. Her expression hardened instantly. Not fear. Readiness. They found us, she said. It wasn't a question. Varen didn't answer right away. Because he didn't know. But the timing. The pattern. The impossibility of what had already happened. All pointed in one direction. Maybe, he said. That was enough. Solon nodded once. Then turned. Her voice carried, sharp, immediate. All hands, standby readiness. Defensive protocols remain active. The shift was instant. The fragile, emerging stability didn't disappear. But it changed. Because hope did not remove threat. It only made it worth fighting. Commander Varen activated the comm. All Horizon units, he said. Continue support operations. A pause. Nothing stops. Because this was the point. Not when things were safe. Not when answers existed. But when the risk was real. And the choice stayed the same. Across the fleet. The work continued. Medical teams moved. Engineers reinforced. Supplies distributed. Because humanity, at its strongest, did not wait for certainty. It acted anyway. And somewhere beyond the edge of detection, something was watching. The first inconsistency was small enough to ignore. Which was exactly why it wasn't. On the bridge of the IAS horizon, Lieutenant Cora stared at the diagnostic stream for 4.2 seconds longer than necessary. Not because she didn't understand it. But because she did. Run that again, she said. The systems complied. No change. She isolated the data. Filtered it. Reconstructed it across 3 independent arrays. Still the same. Cora. Varen's voice came through the comm. She didn't answer immediately. Life sign variants detected, she said finally. A pause. Define variants. Cora leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing. There are inconsistencies in the biological profiles we're tracking across the Aegis fleet. That's expected, Varen replied. Different species, environmental stress. No, she interrupted, more sharply than intended. Then corrected herself. Not like this. A brief silence. Explain. Cora brought the data onto the main display. Baseline human biological patterns are consistent across 58,000 life signs, she said. Minor deviations, nutrition, stress, injury, within expected parameters. She zoomed in. Except for 3. The number landed quietly. 3. Not a pattern. Not a trend. An exception. Location. Varen asked. 2 are aboard a civilian transport, designation Hearthline 7, Cora said. 1 is on the primary command vessel. Aegis. Commander Varen's tone shifted. What kind of inconsistency? Cora hesitated. Because the answer didn't fit. They're human, she said. A pause. But they're not consistent with human physiology. Be specific. She exhaled slowly. Cellular regeneration rates outside normal thresholds. Neural activity patterns, irregular. Another pause. As if their biology is adapting in real time. Silence. Then. That's not possible, Varen said. No, Cora agreed. But it's happening. On the Aegis vessel, Commander Rear Solan stood in the command chamber, reviewing fleet-wide updates. Medical stabilization. Progressing. Structural integrity. Holding. Fuel reserves. Still critical. For the first time since the attack. There was space to think. Which was when the unease began. Commander, her tactical officer said. Yes. There's been a discrepancy in internal monitoring logs. Solan looked up. Define. 3 individuals flagged for inconsistent biometric readings. Her expression didn't change. But something in her posture did. Names. The officer hesitated. Then. 2 civilians. 1 crew member. A beat. Specialist Darren Holt. That mattered. Because Holt was not a civilian. He had served under her for 8 years. Reliable. Consistent. Predictable. Which meant. This was not. Location? She asked. Engineering Section 4. Solan didn't respond. Not immediately. Because this was familiar. Not in detail. But in pattern. We've seen this before, she said quietly. No one asked how. Because they already knew. Commander Varen arrived on the Aegis vessel within minutes. Not alone. 2 Horizon security officers accompanied him. Not visibly armed. But prepared. Solan met him at the entrance to engineering. Her expression was controlled. But sharper now. You found it too, she said. Not a question. Varen nodded. 3 anomalies. 3, she confirmed. A pause. You know what this is. Solan didn't answer right away. Because saying it made it real. We thought it was isolated, she said finally. A beat. We were wrong. Varen studied her. Explain. Solan exhaled slowly. Then. Our enemy doesn't just destroy, she said. They infiltrate. The word settled heavily. How? Varen asked. We don't fully understand, she replied. They create copies. Perfect ones. A pause. Physically identical. Behaviorally consistent. Another. Until they're not. Varen's expression hardened slightly. Purpose. Intelligence, Solan said. Sabotage. Psychological destabilization. She met his eyes. They make you question everyone. Silence. Then. And you've confirmed this before. Yes. How many? Solan didn't answer. Which was an answer. They entered engineering. The space was active. Busy. Controlled. Nothing visibly wrong. Which made it worse. Where is he? Varen asked. Solan nodded toward the far section. There. Specialist Darren Holt stood near a console, working. Normal posture. Normal movement. Nothing out of place. He looked up as they approached. Commander, he said. Calm. Respectful. Unchanged. Solan stopped 3 meters away. Status report, she said. Holt turned fully toward her. Reinforcement grid stable, he replied. External support from Horizon is holding integrity. His tone. Perfect. Too perfect. Varen watched carefully. Not his words. His timing. His breathing. His eyes. Everything aligned. Everything. Correct. Step away from the console, Solan said. A beat. Holt didn't move. Is there a problem, Commander? He asked. Still calm. Still precise. Yes, she said. Step away. Another pause. Then. He complied. Slowly. Deliberately. Hands visible. Non-threatening. Exactly as expected. Varen stepped forward slightly. Specialist Holt, he said. Holt looked at him. Yes, sir. Do you know why you've been isolated? A fraction of a second. Barely noticeable. But there. No, sir, Holt said. Varen nodded once. Run a self-diagnostic. Holt didn't hesitate. Already completed, he said. Results. Within normal parameters. Of course they were. Solan's voice cut in. Darren. That made him look at her differently. Not incorrectly. Just, more focused. You've served under me for 8 years, she said. Yes, Commander. What's my standing order during crisis containment? No hesitation. Preserve fleet integrity above all else. Correct. And what did I say to you before the evacuation at Karth Station? Another pause. Slightly longer. Then. You told me to prioritize civilian transport routes. Also correct. Everything. Correct. Solan stepped closer. One more, she said. A beat. What did I say after? Silence. Not long. But long enough. Holt's eyes didn't move. His posture didn't shift. But something. Paused. You said. He stopped. Because there was no data. No memory. No record. Because that moment. Had never been logged. Solan's voice dropped. I told you to come back alive. Silence. Holt didn't respond. Couldn't. Because that. Wasn't in the system. Varen moved instantly. Now. Security stepped forward. Holt reacted. Not violently. Not aggressively. But efficiently. Too efficiently. His movement wasn't human. Not in speed. In precision. Calculated. Optimized. He reached for the console. And stopped. Because Solan was already there. Weapon drawn. Steady. Pointed directly at him. Don't, she said. One word. Flat. Final. Holt froze. Not out of fear. Out of recalculation. Varen watched it happen. The shift. Subtle. But undeniable. You're not him, Solan said. Holt's expression didn't change. But his voice did. Slightly. Incorrect, he said. The tone was wrong. Too even. Too clean. You are experiencing stress-induced misidentification. Solan didn't lower the weapon. You're not him, she repeated. Silence. Then. Something changed. Not physically. Not visibly. But perceptibly. As if the thing standing in front of them had stopped trying to pretend. You have improved detection capability, it said. No longer Holt. Not entirely. Varen felt the shift immediately. What are you? He asked. The thing tilted its head slightly. Observer, it said. A pause. Learner. Solan's grip tightened. How many of you are here? No response. Answer. Silence. Then. 3, it said. Confirmed. Cora's data had been correct. Purpose? Varen asked. The thing looked at him. Directly. You, it said. A pause. Your systems. Your decisions. Another. Your limits. That was enough. Varen nodded once. Understood. He glanced at Solan. She didn't hesitate. Secure it. The security team moved in. Carefully. Precisely. No sudden movements. Because whatever this was, it wasn't done. As restraints locked into place, the thing spoke again. You are accelerating, it said. Varen didn't respond. You are altering expected outcomes. Solan's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? A pause. Then. They will come sooner. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Who? Varen asked. The thing didn't answer. Because it didn't need to. They already knew. On the bridge of the horizon, Cora watched the outer sensor grid. The anomaly signature had changed. Not closer. Not stronger. But active. Commander, she said. Her voice steady. But tight. We're no longer alone. Across the fleet. The work continued. Medical teams. Engineers. Stabilization. Because survival didn't stop for fear. But beneath it, something had shifted. Trust. had fractured. Because now they knew. The enemy wasn't just coming. It was already here. The first external contact did not come from the direction of the anomaly. It came from somewhere else entirely. On the bridge of the IAS horizon, Lieutenant Cora was already tracking 3 independent variables at once. The anomalous energy signature at the edge of the sector. The internal containment of the infiltrators. The stabilization metrics across the Aegis fleet. None of them were stable. All of them were trending toward something worse. New contact, she said. Commander Varen didn't turn immediately. Source. Cora adjusted the sensor array. High-density emissions, masking field active. A pause. Decloaking sequence detected. That word carried weight. Because cloaking technology was not common. Range. Varen asked. 12 kilometers off the port side of the Aegis flagship. Too close. Way too close. On screen. The main display shifted. Space distorted. Then unfolded. A ship appeared. Not emerging. Not arriving. Just revealing itself. Sleek. Angular. Built with a precision that suggested intention rather than survival. Dark plating. Minimal external damage. Weapons powered. Not hidden. Not subtle. Deliberate. Unknown vessel, Cora reported. Energy readings consistent with advanced weapon systems. Shielding active. Drive signature, unconventional. A pause. They've been here for at least 18 minutes. Watching. Waiting. That changed everything. On the Aegis bridge, Solon saw it at the same time. Her reaction was immediate. All hands, defensive readiness. Her crew didn't hesitate. They didn't question. Because they had seen this before. Unknown ship. Unknown intent. Too close. Contact designation. Her tactical officer asked. Doesn't matter, Solon replied. Treat it as hostile until proven otherwise. A beat. Launch perimeter fighters. Within seconds. The Aegis fleet moved. Not cleanly. Not perfectly. But fast. Fighter craft, damaged, patched, barely operational, detached from docking clamps and moved into defensive formation. They didn't spread wide. They stayed close. Tight. Protective. Every movement centered around one objective. Shield the civilians. On the horizon, Varen watched the formation take shape. They're expecting an attack, he said. Yes, Cora replied. They've seen this before. That much was obvious. Open a channel to the unknown vessel, Varen ordered. No response yet. Communications replied. Keep trying. The unknown ship did not move. Not forward. Not back. It simply observed. Then it transmitted. The signal was clean. Structured. Precise. This is Envoy Vessel Sable Directive, the voice said. Calm. Controlled. Cold. You are operating within a monitored sector. Varen stepped forward. Identify your organization. A pause. Then. We are the Sovereign Collective. The name meant nothing. Which made it worse. Your presence here is unauthorized, the voice continued. You will identify yourselves and declare operational intent. Not a request. A demand. Solon's voice cut across the shared channel. This is Commander Rhea Solon of the Aegis Fleet, she said. Her tone was different from before. Harder. Sharper. We are survivors under emergency conditions. A pause. We are not a threat unless engaged. The same line. The same rule. Repeated. Because it was all she had left. The response came instantly. Your fleet's configuration suggests otherwise, the voice replied. Your vessels are damaged. Your formation is defensive. Your systems are operating beyond safe thresholds. Another pause. You are either fleeing something. A beat. Or bringing it with you. Silence. Because that was the question. Commander Varen stepped in. This is Commander Elias Varen of the Orion Expansion Authority, he said. We are providing humanitarian assistance. A pause. These vessels are under our protection. That word, protection, shifted the tone. Immediately. The response took longer this time. Processing. Recalculating. Your authority has no jurisdiction in this sector, the voice said. Correction, Varen replied. We do now. Silence. Then. A new variable entered the equation. Additional contacts detected, Cora said. Her voice tighter now. Multiple. Varen turned. Source. High-velocity approach vectors from the outer sector. She brought it up. 3 new signals. Fast. Aggressive. Unmasked. Time to arrival. 2 minutes. That wasn't enough. The unknown vessel, Sable Directive, didn't move. Didn't react. But its energy signature shifted. Weapons. Charging. On the Aegis bridge, Solon didn't hesitate. They're here, she said. No doubt. No uncertainty. Her tactical officer didn't ask who. They already knew. The first enemy ship appeared exactly 1 minute, 47 seconds later. Not through a jump. Not through a gate. It simply resolved into existence. Just like before. Just like the anomaly. Except this time. It wasn't empty. The ship was wrong. Not damaged. Not improvised. Not repaired. Built. Purpose-built. Smooth surfaces that didn't reflect light correctly. Edges that seemed to shift depending on the angle. Weapons. Not visible. But present. Every sensor on the horizon confirmed it. Contact confirmed, Cora said. Energy signature matches infiltrator origin. That was enough. 2 more ships appeared. Then 3. Then 7. All at once. Holding position. Not advancing. Not attacking. Just watching. The bridge went quiet. Because now, there were 3 forces in the same space. The Aegis fleet, damaged, defensive, desperate. The horizon, stabilizing, assisting, untested. The sovereign collective, unknown, calculating, armed. And now, the enemy. They're not engaging, Cora said. Why? Varen asked. No answer. Because this didn't follow any known pattern. The infiltrator, contained aboard the Aegis ship, spoke again over internal comms. They are assessing, it said. Varen activated the link. Assessing what? A pause. Value. The word landed. Cold. Precise. They do not act without optimization, it continued. They are determining the most efficient outcome. Solon's voice cut in. That means they're choosing targets. Yes. Silence. Then. They will begin with the weakest. Every eye on the bridge shifted. Not to the enemy. Not to the unknown vessel. But to the Aegis fleet. Because everyone knew who that was. Commander Varen made the decision instantly. All Horizon units, defensive grid formation. A pause. Position between enemy and civilian vessels. No hesitation. No calculation. Just action. Solon watched it happen. The Horizon's ships moved. Not away. Not to safety. Forward. Into the gap. Between her fleet and the threat. She didn't speak. Didn't acknowledge it. Because there wasn't time. But she saw it. Understood it. And something shifted. The Sable Directive transmitted again. Your positioning is inefficient, the voice said. You are exposing your assets to unnecessary risk. Varen didn't look at the screen. Noted. A pause. We're doing it anyway. Silence. Then. The unknown vessel's weapons powered down. Not fully. But enough. We will observe, the voice said. For now. 3 forces. 1 battlefield. And the enemy. Still deciding. Because this was no longer a rescue. No longer a first contact. No longer even a survival scenario. It was a test. And everyone in that sector had just become part of it. Not the enemy. Not the sovereign vessel. Not even the Aegis fighters holding their fragile defensive perimeter. And in that stillness, the situation became clear. This was not a random encounter. This was alignment. Forces, drawn together by something none of them fully understood. Now occupying the same space. Waiting. On the bridge of the IAS horizon, Commander Elias Varen stood perfectly still. Not frozen. Focused. Every variable was now visible. 7 enemy vessels, holding position. 1 unknown observer, armed and calculating. 63 damaged ships, full of civilians. His own fleet, now exposed. And no clear rules. Status, he said. Lieutenant Cora didn't look away from her console. Enemy ships are maintaining distance. No weapons lock detected, yet. A pause. But their energy output is increasing. Charging. Not in any conventional pattern. That again. Different. Always different. Sovereign vessel. Varen asked. Passive, Cora replied. But they're recording everything. Of course they were. On the Aegis bridge, Commander Rhea Solon didn't wait for more data. She had seen enough. All fighters, she said, her voice cutting clean through the comm network. Hold tight formation. Do not break perimeter under any circumstances. A beat. If they move. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Her pilots understood. Outside. The Viper-like fighters adjusted their positions. Not spreading out. Not engaging. Closing in. Tighter. Closer to the civilian ships. Every movement defensive. Every line drawn inward. Protect. Hold. Endure. On the horizon, Varen watched the formation. They're preparing for impact, he said quietly. Yes, Cora replied. They expect the first strike to break them. That was the pattern. That was how this enemy worked. Not overwhelming force. Precision collapse. Commander, Cora added. Go ahead. I'm detecting micro-adjustments in enemy positioning. Varen turned slightly. Define. They're not advancing, she said. They're aligning. A pause. With us. That was worse. Because it meant they weren't just targeting the Aegis fleet anymore. They were factoring in everything. The contained infiltrator spoke again. Its voice routed through secured internal channels. They are synchronizing. Varen didn't hesitate. Explain. They do not engage until probability thresholds are optimized, it said. They are mapping response times. Reaction patterns. Command structures. A beat. They are learning you. Silence. Then. How long? Varen asked. A pause. Seconds. That was enough. All units, Varen said, his voice steady but sharper now. Prepare for engagement. No alarm. No escalation. Just finality. On the Aegis bridge, Solon heard it. And responded instantly. All ships, combat readiness. Her tone changed. Not louder. Harder. Fuel reserves are secondary. Structural limits are secondary. A pause. Survival is primary. Her crew didn't respond. They didn't need to. They were already moving. Across the fleet. Systems shifted. Power rerouted. Weapons, primitive, patched, unreliable, came online. Not because they were effective. Because they were all they had. On the horizon. The difference was immediate. Shields rose. Clean. Stable. Strong. Weapons systems aligned. Precise. Controlled. Not aggressive. Not yet. But ready. And in the middle of it. The sovereign vessel remained still. Watching. Calculating. This is inefficient, the sovereign voice transmitted again. No urgency. No tension. Just observation. You are committing to a defensive posture against a superior adaptive force. Varen didn't respond immediately. Because the statement was correct. Noted, he said. A pause. We're still doing it. On the sovereign vessel. There was a delay. Not technical. Analytical. Then. Explain your decision. That was new. Not a demand. A question. Varen considered it for exactly 1 second. Then answered. Because they're not expendable. Silence. Then. All assets are expendable, the voice replied. No, Varen said. Yours might be. A pause. Ours aren't. That answer. Registered. Not emotionally. But, structurally. Outside. The enemy moved. Not forward. Not aggressively. But. Slightly. 7 ships. Shifting. Repositioning. Angles changing. Vectors aligning. They're locking trajectories, Cora said. Time to engagement. 30 seconds. On the Aegis bridge. Solon didn't wait. All fighters, ready strike pattern Delta. Her tactical officer hesitated. Commander, that pattern requires. I know what it requires. A pause. Execute. No further argument. Outside. The fighters broke formation. Not outward. Inward. Then forward. A tight arc. A defensive line becoming something else. On the horizon. Varen saw it. They're going aggressive. Yes, Cora said. They're choosing the first move. That mattered. Because it changed the equation. The infiltrator spoke again. They have identified the optimal disruption point. Varen's eyes narrowed. Where? A pause. Then. The civilians. That was it. Now, Varen said. Everything moved. Horizon ships surged forward. Interposing fully between the enemy and the Aegis fleet. Shields flaring as power output spiked. Weapons locking. But not firing. Not yet. Aegis fighters accelerated. Closing distance at speeds that ignored safety margins. Not tactical. Not optimal. Necessary. The enemy. Adjusted. Instantly. Their formation shifted. Not to counter. To anticipate. They're predicting our movement, Cora said. Of course they are, Varen replied. Then we stop being predictable. That was the moment. Not when the battle started. But when the rules broke. On the Aegis bridge. Solon leaned forward slightly. Change vector, she ordered. Her pilot blinked. That puts us inside their engagement envelope. Yes. A beat. Do it. On the horizon. Varen saw it happen. They're going inside. Cora's voice tightened. That's not what we'd do, Varen finished. A pause. Which is exactly why it might work. The sovereign vessel transmitted again. This is irrational. Varen didn't look at it. Yes, he said. It is. Outside. Distances collapsed. Vectors crossed. Lines blurred. The enemy paused. For 0.2 seconds. Because something didn't match. And that was all it took. Engage, Varen said. The first shot fired. And the silence broke. The first exchange lasted less than a second. It was enough. The horizon fired first. Not at the enemy hulls. At their vectors. Precision bursts of phased energy cut across the space between ships, not to destroy, but to disrupt trajectory calculations. Target propulsion harmonics, Varen said calmly. Keep them moving wrong. Aye, Cora replied. The beams struck. And for the first time. The enemy adjusted late. Not by much. 0.3 seconds. But in a system built on perfect prediction. That was failure. The Aegis fighters exploited it instantly. They didn't wait for confirmation. Didn't analyze. Didn't hesitate. They dove. Straight into the gap. Closing fast. Cora reported. Distance collapsing. I see it, Varen said. He watched the small, battered fighters accelerate past every safety threshold the Horizon systems would ever allow. They didn't spread. Didn't flank. They went through. On the Aegis tactical channel. Solan's voice cut clean and sharp. All units, commit. No qualifiers. No fallback. Just forward. The fighters hit the enemy formation at point-blank range. Too close for predictive targeting. Too fast for recalculation. They weren't trying to outthink the enemy. They were denying it time to think at all. They're inside the tracking envelope, Cora said, almost disbelieving. They shouldn't be able to maintain control at that distance. They're not maintaining control, Varen replied. They're choosing not to lose it. Explosions flared. Not massive. Not cinematic. Localized. Controlled. Fighters weaving through fire, striking exposed systems with kinetic bursts and short-range detonations. Not enough to destroy. Enough to disrupt. The enemy adapted. Of course they did. Within seconds. Their formations shifted. Not pulling back. Tightening. Creating internal defense grids. Crossfire zones. Kill corridors. Multiple target locks. Cora called. Enemy recalibrating. Then we move again, Varen said. Helm, vector shift Delta 3. The horizon moved. Not away. Across. Cutting through the battle space at an angle that made no sense tactically. But broke every predictive model the enemy had just built. They're losing alignment, Cora said. Good. Temporary. That's all we need. The sovereign vessel. Still hadn't fired. But it was watching. Recording. Learning. Why aren't they engaging? Cora asked. Varen didn't answer. Because he didn't know. Across the battlefield. The three combat philosophies collided. Every shot calculated. Every movement deliberate. No wasted energy. No unnecessary risk. They targeted systems. Engines. Coordination nodes. Energy distribution points. Not to destroy. To control the flow of the fight. The fighters didn't follow patterns. Didn't hold formation. Didn't retreat. They moved like they had already accepted the cost. Because they had. They flew through explosions. They fired at ranges that made targeting systems irrelevant. They used proximity. As a weapon. They learned. Every second. Every movement. Every deviation. Their response time decreased. Their predictions sharpened. Their formations evolved. They're catching up, Cora said. Of course they are, Varen replied. That was the problem. No matter what they did. The enemy would eventually understand it. Commander, Cora added. They've adjusted to fighter approach patterns. On screen. The change was immediate. Enemy ships began rotating. Not away. But into the Aegis fighters' paths. Predicting interception points. Cutting off escape vectors. They're closing the gap, she said. Fighters are losing maneuver space. On the Aegis channel. Solan saw it too. All units, break pattern. Her pilots reacted instantly. But the window was already closing. One fighter. Clipped. Not destroyed. But hit. Its trajectory faltered. Just enough. The enemy adjusted. Immediately. Weapons. Invisible. Activated. The fighter vanished. Not exploded. Not torn apart. Gone. Silence. For half a second. Loss confirmed, Cora said quietly. On the Aegis channel. No one spoke. Because they didn't need to. They had seen it before. Pull back, one pilot said. Negative, Solan replied instantly. If we pull back, they push through. A beat. We hold. That was the line. On the horizon. Varen made a decision. Data pattern analysis, he said. Now. Cora blinked. You want predictive modeling in the middle of. I want to know what they're doing next. Cora's hands moved instantly. Data streamed. Patterns formed. Predictions. Assembled. They're optimizing for civilian breach, she said. Estimated time, 4 minutes. Too fast. We don't have 4 minutes, Varen said. Then we change the problem, Cora replied. That made him look at her. How? He asked. She didn't answer immediately. Because the idea wasn't standard, wasn't safe. They're adapting to us, she said. Everything we do, they learn. A pause. So we give them something they can't learn. Varen understood instantly. Randomization, he said. Yes. Across what? Everything. A beat. Do it. The horizon changed. Not its weapons. Not its position. Its behavior. Firing patterns. Broke. No rhythm. No sequence. Movement. Irregular. Unpredictable. Energy output. Fluctuating. They're losing lock, Cora said. Prediction error increasing. The enemy hesitated. Not long. 0.5 seconds. But longer than before. And that was enough. Now, Varen said. The Aegis fighters surged again. Not in formation. Not coordinated. But unpredictable. They didn't fly better. They flew wrong. And for the first time, the enemy couldn't keep up. Multiple hits. Cora called. Enemy systems destabilizing. One of the enemy ships flickered. Not visually. Structurally. Its surface shifted. Then collapsed inward. Not destroyed. But disabled. Target 1 down. Cora said. The battlefield changed. The enemy paused again. Longer this time. Because something wasn't working. Commander, Cora said. Her voice different now. I'm detecting something. What? Energy pattern. A pause. Consistent across all enemy vessels. Varen's eyes narrowed. Define consistent. It's not local, she said. It's shared. That was it. They're networked, Varen said. Yes. Then we break the network. How? Cora didn't hesitate this time. Hit them all at once. A beat. Overload the system. Varen looked at the tactical display. 7 ships. Connected. Learning. Adapting. Do it, he said. All units, Varen transmitted. On my mark, full spread. No hesitation. No delay. 3. The battlefield held. 2. Enemy ships. Adjusting. 1. Mark. Everything fired. Horizon weapons. Precise. Focused. Aegis fighters. Close range. Aggressive. All at once. 7 targets. 7 impacts. Simultaneous. The network. Overloaded. For 1.2 seconds. The enemy stopped adapting. That was all it took. 2 ships. Disabled. A third. Falling out of formation. The rest. Retreating. Not fleeing. Repositioning. Recalculating. Commander, Cora said. Her voice tight. They're not withdrawing. Varen watched. No, he said. They're learning. And somewhere, beyond the edge of the battlefield, the anomaly signal spiked. The fight wasn't ending. It was evolving. It was enough. On the bridge of the IAS horizon, every system reacted at once. Not to the battle. To something else. Commander, Cora said. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Because the data spoke for itself. New contact, she said. Then corrected herself. Not new. A pause. Returning. Varen didn't look away from the battlefield. Source. Cora's voice dropped. The anomaly. Silence. Because that wasn't supposed to happen. Location, he asked. Behind us. That changed everything. Distance. Less than 1 light minute. Too close. Too fast. Impossible. The enemy ships paused. Not retreating. Not advancing. Just still. They feel it, Cora said. On the Aegis channel. Solan's voice cut in. What just changed? Varen didn't answer immediately, because he didn't have one. Then, space broke. Not exploded. Not tore. It opened. The same way it had before. The same impossible geometry. The same absence. Becoming something. But this time, it didn't release survivors. It released something else. One object. At first, it didn't look like a ship. It looked incomplete. A shape that didn't fully resolve. Edges that didn't hold still. Mass that didn't stay consistent. Reading size. Cora started. Then stopped. I can't. Because the numbers didn't stay the same. The object shifted. Not position. Not structure. Definition. And then, it stabilized. Just enough. Estimated length, Cora said slowly. 3 kilometers. Bigger than anything else in the sector. And wrong. In ways the others weren't. The enemy ships moved. Not forward. Not attacking. They turned. Toward it. That's new, Varen said. They're not engaging us, Cora added. No. They're reacting. The infiltrator, still restrained, spoke. They did not anticipate this. Varen activated the channel. What is it? A pause. Then, they are not alone. That landed. Because it meant the enemy they had been fighting wasn't the top of the chain. The massive object moved. Not through space. Through something else. One moment. It was 60,000 kilometers away. The next. It was 12. No acceleration. No transition. Just closer. Every system on the horizon tried to track it. Every system failed. Targeting impossible, Cora said. Lock cannot be maintained. Don't try, Varen said. Because instinct, for the first time, was telling him something simple. This was not something you fought. The sovereign vessel transmitted again. Its tone changed. Not emotional, but less certain. This entity is not part of the observed engagement pattern, it said. Varen glanced at the display. Meaning. A pause. It was not predicted. That mattered. Because everything else had been. The massive object shifted again. Not closer. Around. Positioning itself. Between all three forces. The enemy. The horizon. The Aegis fleet. Centered. Watching. Then. It transmitted. Not in language. In something else. A signal. Not sound. Not data. Meaning. Raw. Unfiltered. Every system on every ship. Lit up. Not with information. With interpretation. Cora gasped. For the first time. Commander. Varen felt it too. Not through the sensors. Directly. A question. Simple. Clear. Why? The enemy ships responded. Not with weapons. With alignment. They turned. Fully. Toward the massive object. And for the first time. They stopped adapting. They're deferring, Cora said. That word should not have applied. They're waiting, she corrected. For instruction. The infiltrator spoke again. They are subordinate. Silence. To what? Varen asked. A pause. Then. To that. The realization hit. All at once. Everything they had fought. Everything they had seen. Was not the threat. It was. The system. And this. Was the source. The massive object shifted again. Closer to the Aegis fleet. Solan's voice snapped across comms. All ships, prepare for impact. Varen cut in immediately. Negative. She didn't hesitate. Commander, that thing. I know. A beat. But it's not targeting us. How do you know? Varen didn't answer right away. Because he didn't. But something. In that signal. In that question. Said this wasn't random. The object stopped. Directly in front of the Aegis fleet. Not attacking. Observing. Then, the signal came again. Stronger. Clearer. Why preserve inefficiency? Every system translated it. Not as words. As intent. The sovereign vessel responded. Immediately. Define inefficiency. The object didn't pause. They are non-optimal. A beat. They should not exist. The meaning was clear. The Aegis fleet. The civilians. Were. A mistake. Solan's voice came through. Quiet. Controlled. They're talking about us. Varen stepped forward. Activated the channel. Spoke. Directly. No. The word cut through everything. Not loud. Not aggressive. Certain. They should. Silence. The massive object. Shifted. Not physically. Attention. Focused. On him. The signal changed. Narrowed. Directed. At one target. Him. Explain. And in that moment, Commander Elias Varen understood. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a test. Of logic. Of value. Of what deserved. To survive. Behind him. 58,000 lives. In front of him. Something that could erase them. Without effort. And for the first time. The outcome. Would not be decided by weapons. It would be decided. By the answer. For a moment. No one moved. Not the enemy. Not the sovereign vessel. Not even the damaged fighters holding position around the Aegis fleet. Because everything. Had shifted. This was no longer a battle. It was judgment. Commander Elias Varen stood at the center of it. Not as a strategist. Not as a commander. But as the only variable the entity had chosen to engage. Explain. The word remained. Not spoken. Not heard. But understood by every system and every mind in the sector. Varen didn't answer immediately. Not because he didn't know what to say. But because for the first time. Precision wouldn't be enough. Logic wouldn't be enough. This required something else. Behind him, Lieutenant Cora watched the datastream unravel. Nothing about the entity followed rules. It didn't process information. It evaluated existence. And right now, it was evaluating them. Commander, she said quietly. Not a warning. Just presence. Varen nodded once. He understood. There would be no second attempt. No adjustment. No correction. Whatever he said next would define the outcome. He stepped forward. Not physically, but into the channel. Into the focus of something that had already decided most civilizations weren't worth keeping. They're alive, he said. Simple. Direct. No embellishment. Silence. Then. That is not sufficient. Of course it wasn't. Varen exhaled slowly. Then continued. They adapt, he said. They endure. A pause. They choose to keep going, even when the outcome is already against them. The entity responded immediately. Inefficiency. Yes, Varen said. No hesitation. That word. Echoed. Across every ship. Because it was true. They were inefficient. Damaged. Fragile. Unoptimized. And still. He didn't correct it. That's the point, he said. Silence. Longer this time. Because that. Didn't fit. Behind him, Solan watched. Not speaking. Not interrupting. Because this. Wasn't her fight. Not anymore. They shouldn't exist, the entity repeated. Varen nodded slightly. They shouldn't, he agreed. Cora looked at him sharply. Even the sovereign vessel. Paused. Agreement. Was not expected. They shouldn't have survived, Varen continued. They shouldn't have held together. They shouldn't still be here. A beat. But they are. The silence deepened. Because now. The argument had shifted. This is not optimization, the entity said. No, Varen replied. Another pause. Then what is it? And there. That was the question. Not about survival. Not about efficiency. But meaning. Varen didn't look at the data. Didn't check the sensors. Didn't calculate outcomes. He answered. Without any of that. Choice. The word moved through the system differently. Not rejected. Not accepted. Processed. They could stop, Varen said. They could give up. They could collapse. A pause. But they don't. The entity didn't respond. They choose to stay, he continued. They choose to fight. They choose to protect each other, even when it costs them everything. Another pause. That's not inefficiency. Silence. That's something else. The entity shifted. Not position. Not form. Focus. Define. Varen didn't hesitate. It's why we're here, he said. That landed. Not emotionally, but structurally. Because now, the equation had changed. The Aegis fleet was no longer just data. It was a variable. The entity remained still for 2.1 seconds, which, for something that processed reality instantly, was an eternity. The enemy ships waited. The sovereign vessel silent. Every system paused. Then, the entity spoke again, re-evaluating. Across the battlefield, the enemy ships flickered. Not damaged. Not disrupted. Disconnected. They're losing synchronization, Cora said. The network. Breaking. Not by force. By decision. The entity shifted. Away. From the Aegis fleet. Not retreating. Redirecting. They are non-optimal. A pause. But not without value. That was it. Not victory. Not triumph. Permission. The enemy ships pulled back. Not fleeing. Reassigned. The anomaly. Reformed. Around the entity. Not opening. Receiving. And then. They were gone. No explosion. No trace. Just. Absence. Silence returned. Real silence. No signals. No threats. No unknown variables. Just. Space. Commander Varen exhaled slowly. Behind him. The Aegis fleet remained. Damaged. Overcrowded. Fragile. Alive. On the Aegis bridge. Solon didn't speak. For a long time. Then. Quietly. Status. Her crew responded. Enemy contacts gone. Structural integrity holding. Life support stable. A pause. We're still here. Solon closed her eyes. Just for a second. Then opened them. Continue operations, she said. Because survival didn't stop. Even after everything. Later. On the observation deck of the horizon. Commander Varen stood beside Solon. No urgency. No crisis. Just. Time. They left, she said. Yes. Why? Varen didn't answer immediately. Because the real answer wasn't simple. They made a different calculation, he said. Solon nodded slightly. They decided we were worth it. A pause. Not exactly, Varen replied. She looked at him. Then what? He exhaled slowly. They decided we decide. Silence. Because that meant something. Outside. The Aegis fleet drifted. Not broken. Not lost. Just. Not finished. We're not going to be the same, Solon said. No, Varen agreed. A pause. But you're still here. She looked out at her ships. At the people inside them. At everything that remained. 32 billion, she said quietly. Varen didn't respond. Because some numbers didn't need answers. They're gone, she continued. Yes. A pause. But this. She gestured outward. This isn't nothing. Varen nodded. No, he said. It's not. The universe still operated on principles. It still followed rules. It still reduced everything, eventually, to something that could be measured, predicted, and understood. But sometimes, very rarely, It encountered something that didn't fit. Not because it was more powerful. Not because it was more advanced. But because it chose to exist anyway. And for the first time. That was enough.